Alright, are we live? I think we're live. Let me see here. Should be if I, recording in active frames. Skip frames due to lag. Are we good? Are we? Give me a second. Gonna put one over on this screen really quickly and just go over to my YouTube channel on here. Oh! It says here we're live. Alright, I was just making sure audio and everything's working. So, welcome. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Sharp Z. I've made a few smaller projects in the past. My, not really anything too major. Chorus Symphonis, which was a smaller RPG Maker title, and Bane Family of Misfortunes, which this final update for that is still coming. I just want to take some time on it. But, anyway, so, if you're here for these development streams, and this is the first time you're seeing anything I do, just welcome. I like to, I guess, kind of like napkin pitch. My channel mostly covers video game related content I find interesting, so things like the history of genres, or maybe individual games every once in a while that I fall in love with or are fairly important to me, I'll cover as well. But with this, I wanted to start development on a game project, because one thing I often get asked by people is, how is it done? And the answer actually is not as straightforward as a lot of people would think. So, welcome to the first episode, and today we're going to discuss a more unique topic before we get into the actual development side, and that topic is design documents. So, for those of you who are not familiar with what a design document is, allow me to pull up some of the crazier design documents I have done. So if I were to search in here, Project Waveshift, CS2. So this is from a little farther back. This was my conceptual documentation for Chorus Symphonis 2, which has been put on a hiatus because I decided I wanted to remake 1, and that's actually what we're going to be doing throughout these streams. So, I know what people are asking here. What is a design document? So your design document's going to contain everything that you need for information when you go to set out to create your game. How in-depth this will be will very much vary on the developer. Similar to something like writing a story or creating an article, usually some people need a whole lot more outlining and a whole lot more information. I just like to list all the information I think of on a design document, because that way I can look at all this and I can say, okay, I have all these concepts, now how do I put them together? However, there is another approach I like to take where I go in kind of the opposite direction. So if you look right here, this is for the one we're actually going to be working on in these streams. Now, right now, I'm very heavily focusing on the writing, because that's what I feel like I want to be the main focus of the game, but that is not most of what we're going to be talking about for this stream. So, we're going to be going down... Ignore that. I have a sound file on my computer where it's Mario. So you're going to be hearing that a whole lot over these streams. But, oh boy. Here we go. So, when we get into the more game play side of things, what I usually like to tell people here is you want to have your key points of game development. What makes your game unique? what are the things that you're like, I want this in here regardless. Not the kind of things where you're like, well, I can cut it out if I want to. Just if you only had 2 days or a week to make your game with something like a game jam, what has to be in there, what is optional, and what do you think needs to absolutely be done well and focused on? For this game, for example, what I want to focus on is something that I kind of have always had in mind as a mechanic for Chorus Symphonis as a series. Sorry, I'm gonna get some caffeine in my system. Got a few sodas a few hours ago. But anyway, the duet battle system, unlike most other RPG battle systems, I want to focus on a 2-character system, where the complication of the gameplay and the depth of the battle system, rather than coming from what your individual characters are capable of and what their weaknesses are, which that will still play a role in it. Do not get me wrong. It will still be, oh, this character has more health, or this character is quicker, things like that. But it's more so going to focus on how do the 2 characters interplay. Mainly because Chorus Symphonis is a series that I always have felt is about relationships, how we connect to other human beings, so I wanted to do that. As a consequence of that, with this one, I forgot to list it here, but I want to put a star here. This is something that I usually do in my work, to say, look into this. Multiplayer is something that I might want to do in the future. Granted, with design documents, as I mentioned earlier, it's something that you can do very differently depending on how you're making a game. There's some developers who like to have a very, very short design doc, but then there are other developers, like I would say myself, who go the other direction, and our design documents can be novels. Like, this is a 20-page design doc, granted most of it is taken up by writing, mainly because with all of this, I know what I definitely want in there, but I feel like once you get your core building blocks of your game in, once you realize how this all works, then you can move on to the more complex side of the game creation. But as for what you'll definitely want listed in here before you start, I would say at the very least have a basic plot idea in your head. Granted, if it's a longer form story, like something, so for example an RPG or a visual novel, or something where a story is going to pretty much be a majority of the gameplay, I would say in some circumstances, like with the RPG, you can wait on completing your story to start the game. Because very likely what will happen is, even if you have a script in mind, similar to things like movies, similar to things like TV shows, there will be moments where something happens and you decide to go off script. It is very hard to stay on that script 100% of the time, and especially if you are going at it alone and you have to do most of this work yourself, which for me, the things that I don't like doing but still need to do are the graphics. I am absolutely okay, aggressively okay at sprite art. I am not good with music. I have a music guy though, so I don't usually worry about that side of things. And my coding, while it is decent, I'm not going to act like I'm a terrible coder. It is hard for me to optimize most of the time, which is something that we will actually be talking about in one of these streams. But regardless, what you need to remember with these design documents is what this is it is not the massive novel that covers everything that you're going to do. The best way that I've heard it put is your design document should at minimum just be a backbone or a roadmap of, these are what the things I need to do or want to have in there, let's test these out. Because with game design, one thing that you will hear with some games is they design themselves. If I remember correctly, Game Maker's Toolkit has a whole video on it, where a lot of games, after you start the creation process, what ends up happening is you see one or two emergent mechanics, and you will think, oh, this is more fun or more interesting than I thought it would be in the design phase. And then you begin to focus on that mechanic, and maybe a few things change. For example, with one project that I've been working on, which should have a fuller release coming up in the future at some point, Project Waveshift is the name of that project, and it started just as a move I liked in a Metroidvania game I was working on, and I found myself whenever I was testing that Metroidvania game out, I would enjoy that shift mechanic so much that I thought, what if I made the entire game around this rather than just making it a power-up? And then I realized, hey, what if we took that Metroidvania concept still, and we made that shifting momentum, that sudden burst in speed, more so a mechanic, and then it took a lot of beat-em-up mechanics, and I thought, I want to add in fighting game mechanics, but it just got a whole lot more complicated, so I've been thinking, hey, let's start with this one. And, all my rambling aside, let's talk about what I mean when I say the core of your game. So with Chorus Symphonis 2, I want to focus on one word. From start to finish, synergy. And I know that's kind of a buzzword, but I guess a better word would be interplay. So, when your system is only 2 characters with the potential for multiplayer, you need to make sure that with those 2 characters, every interaction feels, I guess, a little more freeform. And I liked the idea, when I was sitting down for it, I still wanted to keep it an RPG. But I felt that with a turn-based system, in a traditional sense, it felt kind of limiting for what I could do with that. Because I can do dual attacks, or I can have characters change placements, but eventually it hit me that a top-down strategy-style game, when it comes to maps and movement, would probably work better, especially since it all started with this elemental states idea. So one idea that I had early in development of Chorus Symphonis 1 and was intending on putting in 2 until that game kind of went on a development drop, and that's part of why I'm actually remaking 1 first, is if I want to make 2 in this style, I want to remake 1 so people can play 1, but also I feel like I can revisit it and make it an actually good game that's just not just some guy's first RPG Maker release. I love that game. Don't get me wrong. That's my first game ever, so I love it. But I felt like this was something unique enough to have a whole game on its own. So, the elemental state system. Let me explain how this is going to work. So, with elements, as it commonly works in most RPGs, most elements have some state of some kind attached to them. So if it's a fire attack, it has a burn state. If it's water, it has a wet state. Ice has frozen, lightning has shocked, etc., etc. Level 2 states were a concept that this originally started with, because I liked the idea of every single element inflicts a particular state, and then something hit me. If you were to make an enemy wet, and then you were to hit them with a frozen attack, it would stand to reason that you would have a higher chance of freezing them. So I thought, let's have all these interplay with each other, so this, if an enemy is burning and you make them wet, it cancels out both. If an enemy is wet and you hit them with lightning, it's going to do more damage because they're covered in water. And then one more idea came up with it. And that was the idea that if you have water and, well, with earth attacks, dirty was going to be one of the states. So if you were to hit them with both, they'd be covered in mud, and I thought, what if I then wanted to heat the mud up, and even though I know this isn't 100% scientifically accurate, the character were to turn into ceramic. And then it hit me, if you kept going by this logic, you can add a whole bunch of these states. And if the states are the main focus, maybe we should add a few flares to them. For example, some of these are AoE states, which means that, as the name implies, they are based on an area. So for example, wind is always going to be an AoE attack. It's going to be a twister, which you can imbue with other elements. A few attacks are tap to heal. So those are states that are going to be fairly common to get, but you can easily heal yourself with an item or heal a teammate if you tap them, and that goes for the enemies as well. Pretty much, if I'm saying it here, just assume it applies to both hero and enemy. The ones with the little carrot, like that, those ones require material to perform the spell or initiate the state. So for earth attacks, for example, if you want to attack someone with a sand attack or a dirt attack, you will need to go ahead and either make sure there's sand or dirt in the environment to use. So if you're outside, this would be an attack where you're like, oh yeah, I can use it, no problem. Or you would need to have material on you to put down. So maybe pocket sand. I know that's kind of an ongoing joke between a lot of people, but pocket sand could actually be a legitimate, useful item. And then there's I skipped this one on accident, contagious states. So a few states are contagious in that if you were to be hit with the state, I'm going to go ahead and block it out on that one. If you were to hit with a contagious state and you were to either A, hit someone, B, get hit, if you were to hit someone while in that state, or if it was your ally, if you were to stand right next to them, you would catch that state. So it's the kind of thing where it's a risk versus reward state. So if you want to catch someone on fire, for example, because this is a contagious state, your options are either, number one, hit them with water and they will enter a steamed state, which cancels the fire damage but makes their visibility go lower. I'll decide what most of these states do later. A few of them are just burst states, where it's if you hit them, it just does a whole lot of damage and then that's it. Like, it's pretty much a massive damage burst. Because if you were to set up, let's say you set up glass and then you hit them with Judgment, which is created by light attacks, and they were to be refracted. That takes 3 states. It takes hitting them with sand, hitting them with fire, and then hitting them with Judgment. So that being a damage burst makes sense. Or there's a few where it's an AoE focused attack. So if you have water, for example, on the ground and you hit it with a frozen spell, you can make an ice patch. So enemies will probably make it so that if you move over it, it slides you in that particular direction, and the same thing for enemies. The main issues that I think we'll run into with this system, just from my little preliminary research on the code. Number one, I think there'll be a few of these states where they end up stacking. Because here's the thing, right now, with how this is, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 states which are just designed to be the primer state. The first level of states. When it comes to secondary, that nearly doubles. When it comes to level 3 states, it kind of becomes smaller again. And then there's only one level 4 state, which is the resurrected state, which is the most powerful move in the game. There are a few ideas for states which I am kind of hot and cold on. Time is one that I might implement, but I don't want to implement on the player characters. I would rather have that either be locked behind a NPC or an item. But regardless, I want to be able to make the state system the focus. However, before we can do any of this, we need a baseline game to work with, which brings us to the part that everyone's probably been waiting for me to get to since I started this stream, Game Maker. Now, this is my engine of choice, which leads into the second part of the conversation, how do I choose an engine? When it comes to engines, there are a whole lot out there, and I would say when you're choosing an engine, think of 2 things. Number one, what is my skill level? What am I at? And I feel like that is probably the lesser factor that you should consider to some extent. Like, if you have some experience with coding, GML, at least from my experience, is not too hard a language to pick up. It has a few unique distinctions from something like C# or JavaScript, but outside of that, it is a fairly easy language to understand. Even if you want to try something different, they do have a drag and drop system, but I just find that more complicated than just writing the code out manually. As for other engines, Unity, that one's a fairly common one. There's a lot of resources for it, which is what I would say is the biggest strength of Unity, number one. Number two, it's good for 3D and 2D development, so there's a lot of options there. There are also what I like to label as specialty engines. Something like RPG Maker, something like Ren'Py. All those engines are focused on a particular genre. And with some of those, the licensing's a little weird. For example, if you want to make something in Mugen, you actually cannot monetize that. So if that is your end goal, to make a monetizable fighting game, well, you could use Mugen to experiment and gain an understanding of how the fighting mechanics would work. If you want to make a released product, you'll probably need to change the engine at some point in development. Now, with GameMaker and other engines, the other issue you'll run into is price and licensing. With my copy, I managed to pick GameMaker up before the subscription model hit. I paid, I want to say it was around $70 at the time, but now it uses subscription services. So even though I can use it for free, I want to say I still have to pay for exports, which depending on how many versions are going to be exported, might stack up over time. And that's something else you'll want to keep in mind, is how am I paying for my engine? But the most important aspect is, does the engine fit the game? And with GameMaker, it's the one that I found fits with most of my projects nowadays because of a few things. Number one, the simplicity of GameMaker is great. Number two, for a fairly simple engine, it's also fairly versatile. The language very much categorizes things into the, you can do whatever you want within the 2D space. You have your area editor. Here, let me go ahead and make this new project. I went ahead and labeled it CS Remake. It's likely going to end up being called Core Symphonis Reprise. Wait, open. I think I went ahead and Untitled Cowboy. New blank. Project name, CS Remake. Oh, yeah, I need to click Let's Go. I have not made a new project in a while. So, let's get into this. So, you have a few areas within GameMaker. You have your workspace, which this is going to be where most of your code is seen. The inspector, which this allows you to, if I remember correctly, once you have objects and rooms, it kind of lets you go from place to place. We have a room editor page, which they actually made a few updates to UI, so if I have a few minutes where I'm just sitting here totally confused about what's going on, that is why. GameMaker does update fairly frequently, at least GameMaker Studio 2 does. If I remember correctly, 1 is actually still free. I want to say there's no subscription service required for 1. So if you want to just try to make a game quickly and get it out, GameMaker Studio 1 might be your better option. It's cheaper. The code is very similar between the two, at least in my experience. But, yeah. So we have layers are in the inspector tab now. So I'm just going to go ahead and close that and inspector instance layer open editor. Okay, yeah, I got it. So let's go ahead and create our first object. So we're going to go into the objects folder here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating a new asset. Actually, if I remember correctly, there should be a way to create a new folder first. That's an import. Create group. Here we go. So, what I like to do is I like to go ahead and set my categories up early on. This makes it easy for you to go ahead and edit your objects. So one thing I always make is what I like to call the O master folder. O is for objects. It mainly you want to add that first letter of what it is, just in case you have an object player and maybe an audio file player, or a if you use specific fonts for every character, a font that says player. So for objects, we're gonna keep going in here. So I'm going to create another group here, and this one's going to be O I'm just going to say, usually I do O entity, but I think we should do one here where it is, yeah, let's do O, yeah, let's do enemy. So O, enemies, create group, O UI. That one is kind of self-explanatory. That's your user interface. That's where all that's going to go. And before anyone asks, why am I doing all of this boring work? When you get later into the project, you will have more and more clutter within this. And what you want to do as a developer is you want to make sure that you avoid that clutter, because then a project does not feel as approachable. Well, I'm thinking about it. Oh, players. So the players tab is going to be for any playable characters. Okay, create object. And let's start by creating our player object. Well, actually, first in the master list we have to... So what I do with OMaster, how GameMaker works, and I will explain this later, what I like to add object-wise into here is what I like to call tags. So with the thing is, I wish that GameMaker would let you do this easily, and I think there might be a way to do it, but I'm probably just not remembering. The reason I say tags is I can go, so if I were to go O entity, create object, especially in a system-based game, this is what you want to do. Living. So entity, that's going to be for anything where it has some kind of control over it. Which, speaking of that, O controller. And yeah. So let's start by making our controller. Why? Before you ask why I'm making this separately, so I was about to mention this, but I will go ahead and mention it now. With how GameMaker works, there is something that you have called, I prefer GML code. Don't ask me again for this product. So, actually, while I'm here, I might as well talk. GML code, it's what it looks like on the tin. It's just basic code. It's sitting here writing the code. GML Visual, this one adds drag and drop boxes, but honestly, I usually prefer to just use the code because you can just generally create it manually. And if you're like me and you've coded a decent amount, yeah, it's just the easier way to do it. So, GML code. And I need to go ahead and go over here. And this is our creation code. So, with how code works in GML, when an object is created, when an object is in this menu, you can add something called events. Now these events, this is where your code's going to be. There are a few other tags that you have in here, variable definitions, physics, parent, etc. But all of those are usually determined by something in here. So, let's start with the creation code. So, with the controller object, we're going to make this very simple. And we're going to go ahead and have it, with the description here, you can just write what you want it to say. So this will say, set controller variables. And see right here where it added the little tag to it, it lets you make a lot of details like this in your text. So I'm going to go ahead and put this at full screen just because this is going to be where we're spending a decent amount of time right now. So we have a few variables that we need to set, and let's go ahead and set them just for now. So one is going to be one that we're actually not going to be using for a while. But this will be for, since I mentioned it in the design doc, multiplayer var. I usually just shorten variables in my code. If you don't do that, that's fine. This literally doesn't make any difference. With that 3 forward slash, I forget what there's forward or backslash, but with those 3 slashes, what you do is you make a comment. So those don't affect code in any way. But let's go ahead and let's just say player underscore num equals 0. So this way I can just have a way to assign that variable at a later point. So that will be how we get controller numbers when we implement controllers. But let's go ahead and put here, or that's honestly, yeah, now that I think about it, yeah, controller isn't really where you need to put most of it. So the rest of it, let's go ahead and go to where we actually have the big part of the event, these step commands. So step is something that is done frame by frame when you are playing in GameMaker. And usually you want to put things like control in your step command, because if you do not, well, it's going to get a little complicated. If for steps you have 3 commands that you can do. So step number 1, this just kind of does it normally. This one's in the middle, this one's before any other step, and this one is at the end of every step. So usually I like to set my controller variables to the step command. Mainly because for controllers, what you want the game to essentially do is you want it to check how you are coding, how your controller input is frame by frame. I'm just making a little room so I can move my keyboard a little closer. Yeah, I finally got a better setup for doing this kind of thing. And trust me when I say it's amazing. So, we are going to go ahead over here, and I am going to open that window. And controller, yeah. So see, variable player num only referred to once. That's something you're going to probably see here in a minute. But, so we have get inputs. Now, right now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and define our keys. So the first one, this is going to be key input def, for key input definition. Now, we have a few keys that we are going to need to define. So key underscore up, key underscore down, key underscore left. That's not what I meant to do. Sometimes it will autofill like that, so equals key underscore up equals key. See if I remember correctly. Yeah, you have a few key check commands here, and I will show you in just 1 second. Key underscore right equals. Alright, so we have a total of 4 key commands. With each of these, we are going to define these variables to equal whatever our key input pressed is. And before you ask why we are defining these as variables, number 1, it makes it a little bit easier to code it later, because we don't have to keep putting in the keyboard input variable, number 1. Number 2, this way you can actually track it. So for key up, it's going to be key, I forget what there's keyboard check And you have 3 here. Direct, pressed, and key. Excuse me, direct, pressed, and released. So pressed and released are kind of what they say on the tin. Pressed is when you push the key down, released is when you put the key up. What we want here is just a standard keyboard check. That way it's just going to check if the button's pressed. VK underscore up. So what this does is it checks for the virtual keyboard up. Now, granted, for some reason, that's just how you input your keyboard check command. So VK down. And then equals keyboard check VK left, and then keyboard check VK right. And that should, yep. So it gives you this error message because these variables have only been used once and they're kind of just sitting here useless. They won't be like that for long, so let's get into it. What we have here is we're going to make a, and I will do the rest, I'm going to do something with this later. So the reason why I'm defining the controller as a separate object from the player. Number one, this is going to be a strategy RPG. So, making the controller a separate object will give us the ability to control the player. Number one. Number two, what you have is you have the relation between parent-child objects, and I'm pretty sure if I go in here, object get parent, yeah. What we can do is, actually we should go ahead and say, let's make one more variable here. Can control. So, we're gonna say by default can control equals false. This is going to be what's known as a Boolean variable. With a Boolean variable, it is a true false, or in binary terms, a 0 or a 1. It is either a yes or no. It's not a complicated variable. This right here, this is an integer. The main reason the player number here is listed as 0 is because we'll work with it later, and if I just did not assign it 1, it would not let me test the game out. So, key right, key left, key up, key down, those are all defined. And then we are going to have movement. And this will go, right now what I am going to do is define a few more variables here. And this is going to be our movement variables. So, by default, HSP, which is going to be horizontal speed, that will equal 0. VSP, that will equal 0. Now, as a note here, these aren't the in-game variables for these. Excuse me, I almost said that by default. GameMaker does have an inbuilt physics system. However, when I am working, I find it easier to ignore that physics system most of the time and just work with what I know. And when you define your own physics system for something like a platformer, a fighting game, or, I mean, for this, I kind of want to define my own to some extent for everything aside from maybe bullets or any item which would be used in a manner where it's a projectile. I will probably use the system that I create here. So the HSP and VSP are your variables for horizontal and vertical speed. Now, let's go ahead and see how these connect. So, movement. HSP equals keyboard, key up, minus key down. And first we need to do one more thing. Y equals y plus HSP. This links the horizontal speed variable to y. X and y within GameMaker are constants. So pretty much what it is if you are familiar with algebra at all, if we were to go into this room, I'm actually going to go ahead and do something here in a second so we can actually test this out. But if you were to go into this room, X and Y are exactly how they are in algebra. Y is one axis, X is the other. So, and then we're going to do the same here. X equals X plus, wait, that's horizontal, excuse me, it should be plus VSP. X plus HSP. And then HSP equals key left minus key right. So the reason I'm doing this is how this is going to work, and I'll probably need to reverse where those are in a second, is if you subtract them from each other, if neither key is input, these are going to equal 0. So HSP will equal 0 if there is no key input here. If there is no key input here, VSP will equal 0. However, if I input the key up, it will equal a positive 1. If I input key down, it will equal negative 1. And if I input both, it will cancel out. It's just kind of the simplest way to do it. Now, let's make an actual player object so we can kind of begin to check this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating an object here, and this one is going to be titled, let's make the first player character. So let's make O-Course. And then we need to add a sprite first so we can actually see it. So, new sprite. And since this is a placeholder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to just go edit image. I'm going to pick a color here. Let's just go with this kind of weird orangey maroonish color. I don't know. I'm not the best with determining what a color is by looking at it. And then let's go to, yep, see how O-Chorus has that on his icon now? Right there? Oh shoot, I just realized my mouse is not showing. But yeah, it will be showing in the next video. But you see how there should be, if you look at chorus right there. Yeah, you can see it. What we do now is we go into here, we go into the workspace. We go back to where it says O Players Chorus right here. You can actually click here to quickly go. And then we go parents. So for parent object, let's set this object's parent object from the master list as controller. And I'm going to go into room 1 here. Right now we have, let's see what layers we have in room 1. If I think, yeah, if you see, it's not going to let me drop it. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to add an instances layer. Oh, shoot, there already was one. I don't know why that's happening. But we have an instances layer here. We need to go into this layer, and we can place down chorus. Now, if we hit play, it takes it a second to compile everything. If you'll see, I reversed it on accident. But if I go to this controller variable and I go ahead and I just edit this really quickly, so key down minus key up, key right minus key left, and that is going to be our... So if you were to see my keyboard right now, you can see that it is moving with the keys I'm pressing. However, this is all good and all, but it's kind of slow. You want to get that better feel on the character, so what we're going to do is we're going to make another variable in here. So under our movement variables, which I'm going to go ahead and make this a section of its own, we have SP variable. We have what I'm going to call movement variable. Like, no, we already have that. I'll find a place for it eventually. But let's do walk underscore SP. And walk SP, let's set it to 5. And then what we're going to do here is go into OController and key down minus key up. So it's going to now be walk underscore SP times key down minus key up. Walk underscore SP times, since this is a top-down game, making the speed universal across the two is kind of what you want to do. And watch. See how that's a little quicker? That, and it will automatically know when you're pressing 2 or more keys. With all this being said, we will talk about in a different episode how to make this work on controllers, but right now our main focus is going to be using a keyboard, and I want to go ahead and do one thing. So can control equals false, and we're going to go ahead and do something with this variable right here. So movement, I'm just going to rename this to universal movement, and I'm going to add a little if command right here. Now, how an if command works is this is going to be pretty much the framework of a lot of what you do in here. So an if command is if a certain aspect is true, then it will do this. If it is not, it will not run this code. So if can control equals true, because we need to make sure, and I'm going to check this really quickly. See, can control is not true by default, so we can't control the character. Now, I'm going to add some specific code onto our, I want to make one more object here. Create object playable. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to define this object's parent as the controller, and this object's and chorus's parent as playable. So if we were to go ahead and go into playable, I want to make a new command. So your step command. So this right here is what's from the parent. So if I were to edit that, it's not going to really do anything. So let me do something that I actually have not done a whole lot. I'm going to do something with mouse and cursor. Usually my games work on controller or keyboard only, but I want to try something unique. So we're going to do something. We're going to add something here. So new step here, and I want to say with this one. Oh, wait, yeah, if you add the playable step command, give me a second. Let me check one thing. If I go to entity here, and if I go to controller, and I define can control as true, can I still control chorus? Because that's the important thing here. Because I want to say if you define a new, I cannot. But what I need to do is I need to go back to this command right here, playable, and I need to step get inputs, add events. So begin step. Or you can actually go into step get inputs here, and it will just open the other one. Yeah, you can inherit events or overwrite them. Now, if we go into the begin step event here, what we can go ahead and do is create a new if command. I'm going to create variables in controller that can be used throughout all of them. And then entity is going to be, that's going to be kind of the big variable that defines smaller variables for everything else. But let's go into playable and begin step. And let's see here, if cursor sprite, if mouse x equals x and mouse y equals y and mouse check button pressed EV mouse wait, what? VK, I want to say it's VK right click. I want to say that's what it is. Okay, so sometimes you will have moments like this where you will need to go and Google it. It happens from time to time. Oh, MB, okay. MB underscore left. Then can control equals true. So watch, if we click it, we can control it. I need to go ahead and add there's one more command I'm going to add really quickly. But if we click him, we can control him. However, if we don't, we can still. Oh, yeah, I forgot to turn that. Let's go to controller. Can control equals false. So if chorus is is under there as playable, watch. If we click him, still cannot move him, huh? I'm probably doing something wrong. I am not good with cursors. I need to work on this. All right. I know how to do it for how do I do. Hey, let me do something here. Self.x self.y Let me check if I do it with my touchpad. All right. Let me check. What sometimes the best method is to. Yeah, because if you press it, it should. display mouse get. So all of these have to be... I could do a collision check. That might be the best option to do it. Every once in a while you just run into issues like these where it's alright, GML mouse position, there we go. If x equals mouse underscore x, maybe if I go the other way. Yeah, that fixed it. I want to say that fixed it. What I'll probably end up doing is go to the course object here, add a solid, and let me go ahead and do one thing. Let me check the collision mask on this, which this would be a good time to do it actually. So you go down to your sprites. Oh boy, I forgot to do that. Okay. S chorus and Texture settings, collision mask. Actually, I think I found a better way to do this for right now. I'm going to make another controller item here. So, by default, where's can control? Let's put this under the can control tab. So, car num, that's going to be for our character number. Let's set it to 0 by default. And then I'm going to go into Chorus right here, and I'm going to edit something with him. So let me go ahead and variable definitions, add. Yeah, because if we do that, we disconnect it. But what we can do here, variable name for this is going to be character underscore ID. And default is, let's say for Chorus, let's set him to 1. If we go into here, car underscore ID equals car underscore ID. If car underscore ID equals car underscore num can control equals true. Because what I want to do right now is I want to make sure that we can switch between controlling characters. And this is going to be character switching. And I need to go back to Chorus here for 1 second. Alright, and we're going to add in a few inputs here. We will remap this when we get to controller, but we're going to go for controller here, and I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, let's just try to merge these two. Tabs. So if we have right here, so it's going to be key underscore car1 equals keyboard check, and since this one is going to be different, we're going to go key check released. We have a few here. We have a VK, VK escape, VK F1. Put it on numpad, but let's do I could also set it to the F, but I want to set it to a different variable. So I always forget what there's a little prefix you have to put on it. Alright, yeah, it's an ord. VK equals ord, and then you do quote unquote. Let's do a 1 here. Key underscore car2 equals released ord 2. Now what this is it's a string, and then we're going to do it right here. This is our universal control code, so it varies from character to character. It's going to go character selection. If key car1 carnum equals 1. If key car2 car equals 2. All right, let me check here. So wait, we should probably give me a second. And what if I went ahead and I just control V that into here? If one. Old controller, I'm going to add a new variable definition. Add car underscore ID equals 0, and we're going to go ahead and do Alright, yeah, so if we go into the controller entity, right here, car ID equals 1, equals 0, and then if we go into chorus right here, this way it knows it's the same ID. So what we can do is we do here, we hit that, and we can override what is listed in there. There's probably some... Oh, that would be why. So all this was put in a set of brackets where I actually can't do anything with it. So, copy, actually, backspace it all. And let's control V it into here. So that way it's not actually put into... So if we hit 1 now, and then if we hit 2, and then we're going to go into here, and else, so if we hit 2, nothing happens. If we hit 1, we can move. If we hit 2, we cannot. So let's get on to object number 2 here, and we're going to create another character, and this one's going to be Symphonia, and I need to add a sprite to this one too, so let's edit the image, and I'm just going to make this one a blue. That way we just have a contrast between the two. So if we do something like this, so Symphonia by default is set to 0 right now. If we go into the workspace here, we go back to Symphonia. I have to edit the sprite. Alright, so Symphonia. Oh, wait. Oh, there we go. That's our first big issue. S. Symphonia. And that goes into our sprites. So now we just have both of our stuff here. Let's go to Symphonia's object, go into parent, and set her parent to the same thing as chorus. So I'm going to set it to a playable. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to variable definitions, and if you'll see the variables right here, her character ID is going to be 2, and let's go ahead and try this out now. Oh, actually we need to do one more thing. Let's go into the room and let's add a Symphonia object right next to chorus. So what you are going to see here is if I press 1, it will let me control chorus. Yeah, and I can move around. If I press 2, it's going to let me control Symphonia. Now, let's do one more thing here while I'm thinking about it. I'm going to go over to Symphonia's object here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the solid one. And then we're going to go ahead and add one more thing to the master list really quickly. Create object, and this will be solid. Well, let's just call this walls. Okay. So that way, if I want to do some edits with the walls later, I can. So if we go into controller here, We're going to go into the controller and we're going to add collision. Sorry, I have to take a phone call. Hello? What?
I have the silver Christmas tree.
Alright.
Do you have the poles?
I do.
Okay, good. Okay.
Alright, love you, Mom.
Love you, bye.
Anyway, so gonna go ahead and put the, I'm gonna make the heading down in here. And then we're going to add collision. If y plus or minus, you can use that as a shortcut, 1 equals y dot wall simple one, VSP equals 0. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to add a sprite to wall. So let's go ahead and let's see here. Wall, edit image. Let's go ahead and make it, let's do that. Yeah, that color means that we'll see it easily. So if we have something like that, and I'm going to go into the workspace here, and I'm just going to add a wall right here. Walls.y. Sometimes it's that simple, you just need to. If y, let's see if we go, if y plus 1, actually I think you need to do, yeah, if I remember correctly. You usually want to do collision before you calculate movement. But see. That if we just do a very simple one, I think I might have been doing something wrong with the. Plus 1 equals O walls, not Y. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I think I forgot to do one thing. Object, solids. Let's see if that does it. Y plus 1 plus R minus 1 . Oh, wait a minute. No, there's a better way to do it. If place meeting, I always forget about this. If place underscore meeting x plus or minus one O walls Alright, there we go. That's about what I'm looking for. And then we're just going to copy this. We're going to Control C and Control V. HSP. X plus or minus 1. So 1. All right, VSP equals. Wait, we have to put one more in here. If Y P So this checks if you're meeting there. I'm trying to remember. I know that I know what I'm missing, but it's just like in the back of my mind. Wait, what if we... I think it might be the other one. The other way around. If place meeting... let's do it x plus or minus 1. And then y minus 1. Wait, x plus or minus VSP. Y plus or minus VSP. I think it might need to go the other way around. Yeah, it is plus or minus VSP. That way it checks, it's not checking if you actually collided, it's checking if, let's see what that would be. Oh wait, it's not a plus or minus, that would be y. Y plus VSP. I mean, granted, collision's not going to be pixel perfect, obviously. But then say we wanted to... I will say the one thing I don't like is that the... Anyway, yeah, so we have the characters, we have a wall, and we have a way to control both of them. Now, one thing I'm actually gonna go ahead and do is edit the background here, just so we actually have something going on in the background. One thing I have learned over time is that you need to sometimes take a little bit of time off from an actual coding to asset browser. Oh, you have to just close it. So go ahead and set the color to something a little different. Like, let's do that just for now. And what I'm gonna do is make another thing right here. So we have our players, we have the kind of the overworld going on. Now let's look back at the design document and let's see some of the stuff we can add in here. That's CS2's design. Keyword input, Core Symphonis reprise. Multiplayer I want to focus on in a different video. I don't really want to mess with controllers right now, and that's what I want to do for that. Go ahead and delete that. Oh, playable. Let's go to O controller here, and I'm going to... So we have all of these are things that it uses to determine movement. Now, enemies are actually going to be coded slightly differently. I will make an elemental system. That will be something we do fairly early on. But enemies will be coded slightly differently, and I can do that in a bit. But for right now, what I kind of want to do is I want to work a tad on the camera. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to... go here. I think we have the room editor. Folders and effects. Sorry, I'm just having a little too much fun with these. Let's just go with a pixelated look. Anyway. Gonna go ahead and go into the room here, and we're going to edit. Actually, let's remove this. There is something where you can just edit the room size. Whether it is a I want to go ahead and do one thing. So, instances. I know there's a way to edit it. I just collapse, expand dock panels. All right. Well, anyway, just have mind blank on what I wanted to do. Oh yeah, what I want to go ahead and make is the next thing we need is we need to add in the spells and a tax system. So for the master list, I'm going to add another object. This one will be O harmonics, and create another object here, O AOE, So, what I think will be the best way to do a harmonic set is if we use an array function. So I'm mainly using this for categorization, but let's go ahead and say create object. Wait, no, I need to go ahead and first go create object O harmonics. I'm going to delete that object, yeah. We need to create a group, excuse me. O and we're going to go in here and we're going to edit this one and we're going to call it O. Let's start with a fire spell, because that will be a fairly simple one to do. So, first thing we're going to do, add event, and we're going to create, with this one, what I would like to do is I would like to set an array for it. So, create, actually let's go ahead, let's do this one and the harmonics one just so we have a good idea. Create. Alright, so upon creation, what I'm gonna do, actually let me do one thing first. So let's define everything into a series of numbers. I'm going to open OneNote for this because that would probably be the easiest way to show this. So, OneNote. Alright, so code layout. So we have a few things that we need to go ahead and do first. So harmonics array. Now what an array is is, and this is a big part of how any single game you're working coding-wise will work, an array is a series of smaller variables. So you know how there were the true falses and the integers that we used earlier? We're going to take all that and we're going to essentially assign it to one variable. So I usually find what I like to do is what I like to call padlock variables, padlock arrays. So for this, for example, let's say you pull that, draw, okay. So it's going to be easier to do with the mouse. Let's use a standard array like this. So for harmonics, we would have the element, here, I'm just gonna let's see here, draw, type. All right, I'm just gonna do it like this. So we would have the element, the state, the damage, the cost, and then a Boolean variable, which would just be can AOE question mark. Now this is a very basic outline. We're probably going to end up needing more than this, but I'm going to go ahead and control. Yeah, I need to do something really quickly. Set to font size like 48. So you're going to need something like this. Cost can AOE question mark. So when you first start, that's what you're going to be doing for the most part, is working on stuff like these. Now, the reason I call it a padlock system is essentially what you can do is, let's say we have a player variable. So for that, we're going to say for the player array, let's just say it's HP, MP, current health. Oh, no, actually, let's just leave it HP, MP for right now. SPD for speed, because this is what we're going to actually put in the controller variable later, is we're going to make a few variables where it's an array that you can use that drag and drop variable menu to add to characters. So like SPD, and then maybe EQP for equipment, which that would be an item variable. Well, I'll explain that later. ATK for attack, DEF for defense, and then we would probably have a few that are more physical. So it would honestly end up being like 2 or 3 variables. So let's say 2 or 3 arrays, excuse me, because we would also have, for every enemy, I would say we make what we call here a state. For the states, I want to make an array. So you would have state 1, state 2, and then state 2. And we would only need 2 of them, because keep in mind with the combination system, what it would be is this second state, the state that state 1 and state 2 combine into, would just replace state 1, and then you could add another state as state 2. And then it would just keep going until you reached a burst state, etc., etc. And then we would have another one of these for the states themselves, yada yada. But let me go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this right here for the moment, just so we can pull up the GameMaker thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this harmonics create variable, and I'm going to open this up again. And let's see here. So what I like to do is it's going to be the harmonic variables. Element equals element. State equals state. Edge equals damage. What you can also actually do, so the parent-child way is probably the easier way to do it, but there is a way that you can actually link these variables manually, which I will do later. What I like to use these for is I like to use objects in one of two ways. Number one, I like to call objects either plug-in objects, where it's pretty much it works like a standard lock key system, where you will plug one object into the other object and it will define the outputs. So think, for example, in a very, I guess, understandable way to put it, if there was a gun in the game and you had various ammos for it, instead of it pulling the information for specific variables from the gun itself, it would say if special ammo equipped, find array. First off, there's gonna always be an array created by these events. With that array that's created, you can take it and pretty much it's gonna have an output array, which will be an input array for something else, if that makes any sense. Where it's like if something is hit, then it's going to, for example, say we have an item with a 60% chance of hitting. What it's going to do is it's going to, it's probably going to say it would be higher than 60 or lower than 60 or something like that. Usually with percentages, you kind of have to flub them around a little bit to find the right kind. But what this is math. And I know people hate that, but that's what this is. It's math. So, back into it. Element, state, damage, cost. Let's see here. Let's just put area spell here. So, either that or AOE underscore var. And that will equal AOE underscore var. So if you have them all listed like this to equal themselves, then it will expect you to define them elsewhere. And I'm pretty sure if you see me try to start it now, it's probably going to say, no, we can't start it. No, it's not. But if we were to make a specific array out of these events, so say what we'll do is let's start by making the fire event really quickly. And it's going to do this won't be on creation, but this will be upon here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it back to full screen because I don't really need it right now. So what we're going to do, this will not be a variable that is done on an event done on creation. This will actually be one done on step. So if we do a step event, I want to do this at begin step because I want to make sure it's one of the first things that happens. What it will do is it will create something with an array. Array create. There we go. Now, let's talk about how arrays work. As I mentioned earlier, it's a set of variables. So it's going to array create size so here 1 2 3 4 5 wait. All right, so it's a size of 5, and then the value is going to be listed like so. Actually, no, we can do it in this begin step. So it's going to be harmonic underscore array equals, and for this, what I usually want to do is something like that. Element state damage cost and then AOE var. Oh wait, no, it's a different set of. You use brackets, not parentheses. So it's going to create that array. And granted, since all these variables are defined, it's not going to crash. But what we're going to want to do is go over to where it has harmonics over here, and we're going to want to go to variable definitions and add the rest of these. So for all of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going over to where we have harmonics create, and so element what we could also do is we could state cost, because what you ideally want to do when you're making a game is you want to make it so that you have to do as little work as possible once you get going. All right, yeah. Damage. And then this one is E underscore bar. So the reason why I'm having it define this right here, let's see here. Boolean. Element. So usually you have a few that you can list here. Asset is probably the one I would say outside of Boolean, which is the most interesting. So asset just lets you pick something else. But that one's going to be integer, and then we're going to leave that as real. And then I want to say integers, it can go positive or negative. So if we wanted to do a special definition, value is a whole number, and then color is, that one's also kind of stuff forward. Sure, AOE underscore, oh, go ahead and check something with the harmonics variable. Underscore var world. All right, so all those are defined. So, right here, what we're going to do is we're going to set its parent to the, let's go to the master, harmonics. And then if we go to, we're going to go into variable definitions here, and let me go ahead and edit this. So for this one, it should be AoE because it's a fire spell. Element, let's set fire as element number 1. State, since we're doing fire first, let's set the burn state to 1. And then cost, let's set that to 20. And then, okay. Yeah, so what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to go ahead and add something to link these to the characters. And what I also need to do is I need to go up here, and I'm gonna make icons and stuff like that for it later. And I haven't actually not experimented with RPGs in here. So let's go ahead and go into create a new sprite, and then we're going to go over to sprites here, and this one is going to be, that one's going to be S fire. What I want to do with this one, let's go ahead and edit the image, and I'm just gonna make something very quickly, a little bit smaller. I'm decent with pixel art, but this is just more so to have something. So let's do that, and then since I want to briefly talk about animations, I'm going to do that. So if you hit play on this, it's not going to look the best. Actually, yeah, I can add one frame between these. That's just a little too onion skin it, and I was about to say that's a little too epileptic for what I'm trying to do. An onion skin it and see. Actually, let's just delete it. And then I'm going to onion skin this one. It's just kind of the, I mean, there's really, I'm not good with fire. I'm just going to be honest. If I think you can do duplicate frame, and then if I were to just kind of drag it down a tad, would that do it? Control Z. Works well enough for me. And we're gonna go over to where we have the fire object really quickly. Oh, fire. So all of this right here, all of these variables, this is defined by this object. However, we're not going to put in this object how it's cast. That's going to go over to the controller object. So let's go into our step variable. And then we're also going to, not in this stream, But there's a few more things that I'm going to outline that are probably going to be our next steps. Mainly because my goal is I want to make a playable demo within the next like 2 weeks or so. So I want to make a few things. Number one, the ability to have a player array that will determine things like MP, if you can cast the spell or not, and what spells you do have. So that will be attached to specific characters. It will probably be one of those in-step kind of things. Let me see here. Yeah, that'll be under O playable. All of these actually might end up being moved to. Give me a second. Some of this is going to be moved to the player event. But anyway. So. I'm going to go over to O playable. Actually, excuse me, O controller again. And I think I figured it out. So, it's going to be in our step. Key har equals keyboard equals device mouse check pressed MB left. All right. So oh wait, all of these. Okay, so that's all the collision controls. Universal movement, and let me go down here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a variable, a new event listing right under collision, and that will be a heading that will cover harmonics. If key har then it will create instance create layer mouse underscore X mouse underscore Y the layer name, and this will be a string, instances, and the object will be OFire, and then you can just close the bracket there. All right, let's go ahead and play. Line 10. Oh, device. Check button pressed. Left. All right. That should do it. Because if you put the device in, it asks for an argument on that. So, if we have a... Yeah, if we have a moving character on, it's going to create this. And then let me actually go ahead and do one more thing in the harmonics variable here. This is going to be a create harmonic variables variable. And let's see here. Time. If so I'm going to edit it again if it ends up being an issue of I want to actually do it by turns rather than time, but let's go ahead and do time. And then it's going to be real value 30. So, variable definitions, that will define the variable when it's first created. And then for harmonics, we actually have something in the begin step here. Harmonic array is created, and it's also time minus time equals minus minus. That would be subtracting 1 from time. If time equals 0, instant underscore destroy self. Oh, time minus minus. I think that fixes it. Yep, let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, so fire. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, I need to. Oh wait, let's go into. I think there's another way to do this, because I think if I remember correctly, what it is doing here, if I go into the master list and I edit harmonics really quickly. time equals time. Timer equals time. So at default, we're going to set timer equals 20. So timer will equal the time that we set right there. I could set an if-then switch, but I think there is an even better way to do this if I remember correctly. Wait a minute, yeah. If we copy, let's go timer equals time, begin step, if timer, okay, here, equals timer minus minus, and there we go. Variable of timer wait a minute. There's an easier way to do this. Time equals time. Timer equals timer minus minus. So if we do timer equals time, that's going to be the first thing it does. We'll set timer to like 40. Let's set it to something high so there's no chance of it. So like 600. So first timer equals time. If timer equals, I put in a 600 or 300. If timer equals 600, we're going to set it so that the timer equals the time. Equals -1 equals time. And let's go ahead and we'll set the timer here to -1. If timer is greater than 0, timer equals timer minus minus. And then yeah, that's a series of events that I think that covers what I'm trying to do. Give me a second. Wait, where's that unexpected syntax error? Where? Oh, timer minus minus. Set 1. Trying to see what the issue is here. It looks like a fire.timer not set before. What? Oh. That'll be... So, the fire event was doing that. So if I just... Here. Now it should do it. Alright, so 1. And then it should be in the harmonics command right here. Begin step. If timer is greater than 0, timer equals timer minus minus. If timer equals 0, then it should destroy itself. Let's set it to like a very high variable. Equals 600. And then I want to say maybe it's what I've set on fire here. So if I go over to fire and I were to set the time equals 30. So timer equals time. Timer is greater than. So it's probably going to take around a second, right? But if timer is less than or equal to 0, instance destroy self. Let's see if that does it. Because sometimes you need to actually tell it. If timer is greater than 0. Oh, I see what it's probably doing is it's not... Do this myself. Timer equals... Wait, let me go ahead and X. I'm going to go and do one thing there because there is this issue that I sometimes see with it that is a little odd. If we go into the harmonics object and if we add a new event where it is just a very basic step event, what we can do is we can paste it in here, and now that code is just running on its own. First going to set timer equals time. So timer equals timer. Is greater than time equals time. Let's go ahead and go into here in our harmonics variable, and timer equals, let's do some ridiculously large number. It's like 1,000. Unless it's probably something obvious like timer minus minus. Let's see if that does it. That does it, yeah. Okay, and I am going to go ahead and, since we've gotten a good amount done, save project. That's something you want to do often regardless of what it is you're working on. But, say we've gotten a good amount of work done. Yeah, 2.5 hours, dear Lord. Whew, boy. But let's do, I kind of want to try one more thing before we go, and that is UI. Well, I want to explain something with UI. So if I go into UI, I'm actually not going to do anything on the master list here. Mainly just because with how UI works, it's easier for me to do this as its own thing. So with this one, we're going to call this HUD. And then what this is a draw event, if I remember correctly. Yep. Draw GUI. Alright, so drawing GUI. Let's see here. Overlay HUD. So you can actually also, while we're at it, what we might as well do as well. Actually, let me do one more thing. Okay, so we're going to create another one, and we're going to call this one system. And we're going to add what this is going to do is we're going to add save, when we add save and load, it will go under this. When we add various other things, it'll go under this. This is basically stuff that's kind of universal. So, step. If window if keyboard key release VK F4. I want to see if this will work, because I actually have not experimented too much with these, but I want to say this will do it. And we need to go to the actual room first and add a system object. What I'm gonna do eventually is I'm going to actually make these persistent objects. Key press What does that command actually do? Oh, Gmail. Oh, full true. See if that does it. So if we set it, I figured it was a Boolean. Wait, is it a function? Do I have to hit FN on my keyboard? Where is the function key? Oh yeah, yeah, because you have to actually code that for the window. Excuse me. But we can also do if this one's the more important one. Key press ord R and it will be re game save game restart. Alright, so that will allow us to just have a quick restart option. So if we are editing, and let's say we move, I want to check if it, wait, none of it seems to actually be working now that I think about it. System, it should be in the room here. Persistent. Let's see here. Yeah, if it's a persistent event, what it's going to do is it will essentially be a, if we F4, unless I put that in. Oh, it's a check. Yeah, that would do it. Check press. Let's see if that did it. Yep, now we can press F4 if we forgot to add a, but if I were to do a 1, reset, all right. If window full screen equals false, I'll set it to true, else window set full screen false. There we go. So it's a fairly simple set of calculations. Now granted, I'm gonna make control for the character smoother and yada yada, but for right now, this covers a lot of our smaller stuff we need to worry about. I don't know why it lags it out so much. I think it's just something with my streaming software and putting stuff in full screen. For some reason, that really, it doesn't like that. Oh, great, great. The only one that we have in here is a spam message. That's amazing. Um, but let me see here. Game restart. Yeah, so this covers a lot of your very basic things you'll need to do when creating any game. Because you want to get all your infrastructure done fairly quickly. Because keep in mind, as part of making this game, you're going to be playing it a lot. So there is one more thing I actually want to check, because I have heard fairly good things about it. So they actually have implemented in the new version of GameMaker a save load system. You used to have to code, let me see, save. Oh, screen save, sprite, save strip. Get save. File. Filter fname. I think that this is a new save and load system that they have implemented. But pretty much what I found the best way to do save and loads is as I mentioned earlier, with arrays. So what you're going to eventually have is you're going to have an event that's also called, so with system, this I'm going to, under UI, add the main menu, and system's going to be an object similar to a few of these other ones like object HUD, where how this GUI is going to work is it is going to follow a set of, if I'm in battle, I'm going to have this HUD. If we're in the overworld, we're going to have this HUD, etc., etc. It's going to take that concept and it's going to draw it out over a few variables. But, you know, I kind of want to work a bit on HUD because I feel like that would be interesting. So, we can actually set a few other things as variables that I will probably do here in a few minutes. Number one, you can set strings as variables, which that is a series of text. So say, for example, that I wanted to make Chorus have his name listed below his character. That would be the best way to do that, is to add that as an array section to the file. But the reason why harmonic arrays work the way they do is because that way we can tell it to pick based on an ID system. So rather than having to define that every single time, we can tweak variables, we can tweak states, but there's going to be a set amount of things that you can and cannot do. Now, one thing I would kind of like to do is let's go back into our system right here for controller. And I'm going to do something to set a range. So, can control. Let's do something called let's make a section for right here. Character number 2, and then it's going to, since this is the character controller, what we're going to do is we're going to make a few objects where it is more so for UI. This is going to fall under UI now that I think about it. So I'm going to make an object and I'm going to call it O center. And so what it's going to do is it's going to draw a circle out from that center. And it will, if can control, it's right here. Yeah, let's actually do it right here. So harmonics, it's going to be under It's going to be right above here, and we're going to call this one range. Alright, so it's going to draw circle, and it's going to work like this. So X, Y, and then I'm going to set the R here to be, since R is the radius, let's set it to be about 10. And then the outline, let's make it C underscore red. That way it's a different color than almost everything else we have on the map. Maybe we should put it as a little higher than 10. Let's do 100 and see how that works. Color 1. C blue. C black. And later I am going to probably actually get what's going on. So it is a step by step. Let me see here. I want to say if we go into here, draw circle GML. Oh, right, that's true. Draw a circle. And then we set outline to, excuse me, outline is a true false. It's a Boolean. It's going to be draw color draw set color red C underscore red. Alright, yeah, because you need to set one color before you do that. Color 1, C underscore red, C underscore blue, true, alright. If we put those right there, Oh, that's if you want to. Okay. Oh, wait a second. What if we... False. Yeah, because it's a 1 pixel thick outline. That would explain it. Actually, let's put this into a HUD. And then we're going to add, let's do it like this. So, yeah, because this will draw it in the overlay HUD rather than on, like that. So if player, if playable dot draw equals true, it will should do it here. Alright, let's go into let me go into the event really quickly. We're going to add the HUD element. get X Y, and let's set this to like 100. Oh. Center X equals player Wait, if we tie this to the player. In my step events here. For that is controller. Let's see. If character number does not equal in the controller here. Alright, this should be fairly easy to do. If we go here, it should be under equal changed, then instance create layer will and then Control X. And can move can underscore control. I'm gonna go ahead and go into the room here, and I'm going to. It might just be because I don't have a center put up, and there should be I'm probably gonna find a better way to do this later, but I'm just gonna line all of those up really quickly. Delete that draw event. Alpha let's set the alpha to 50 and draw circle X, Y, 30, false. Alright, no idea on why that is actually happening, but it's probably an issue in our harmonics event here. Excuse me, in our system event here. One thing you also probably noticed is that it's actually not coming from the center, and there's an easy way to fix that. You just go to origin, set the origin to middle center, and do the same thing with Symphonia here. It's a very simple fix, because if you set it to middle center, then what it's going to do is, since it draws from that point. So, but we do have one issue. What if we actually do it like this? So what if we go into the system here and we hit, so if I go into the controller ID here and I were to take center X I think it's the issue with these right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab all of these. And I'm gonna control X. see here, it should be O center here. And let's see here. Yeah, you can draw a whole lot. The draw function is pretty much your... And I want to set it to a little bit bigger, and 300. And let's see here. So let's say I hit 1. Yeah, I think the one thing I do want to do is I want to... Let's see if we set it to... Oh, wait a minute. It cuts their alpha down when you do that, yeah. I'm going to do one thing actually to this. Properties. I think part of it's just the background coloring. So if I were to edit that really quickly, and let's change the color, I guess, to... Alright, let's change it just to something where it's like... So what I'm going to actually do, let's... Well, we know how to get it to work. I think that's about all I can really ask for. Is if we press 1, we get that, and if we press 2, we get something else. So we're going to, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to try to work with this draw event a little bit more later. But for right now, let's just do, I think if you just, set it true to an outline. And then I want to do one more thing while I'm thinking about it. You can actually go in and you can change how an ellipse works. Yeah, it lets you draw the circle using a 64-sided polygon. That and just the bigger you get, the more of an issue it's going to be. But anyway, for right now at least, that covers about everything we're going to do. That just kind of lets us start working on a few things, range and movement wise. But I kind of want to just take a break for now because I think I've been doing this. Yeah, I've been doing this for about 4 hours. So anyway, yeah, this is stream 1. I feel like we've gotten a decent amount done for it being first stream. Next stream, I want to get into more of the setting up the base gameplay. We're going to try to make our first state combination as an AoE because it will be easier to do it like that than it would be to make enemy AI first. We might make a dummy object or a few interactables in the environment. But yeah, for right now, that's it, guys.